Let's then talk a little bit about the Technician tab. The Technician tab displays one or more groupings of jobs for each technician. We also have unassigned jobs and scheduled jobs. So let's just bounce back to the prioritization screen and let's take a look at the Technician tab. Okay, in the Technician tab, you're going to have your unassigned work, you're going to have any scheduled work. All the technicians, anybody that's producing billable labor, okay, across the top. We also have the ability to change these. So if your top guy you want on the left or you want him on the right, however you want these displayed, just come across the blue bar at the top, the header, and you can move these around so you guys can organize how you want this to take place. So you can move them back and forth either way you want. So you can organize your text however you would like to look at them. There's a variety of information on the screen here. So again, let's start with the effort summary at the top. This is going to be the same details that we saw on the overview tab. That doesn't change. It stays the same. We're going to walk through each of these, and again, let's talk a little bit about the technician headers. If we look, I've got 3 technicians at the shop. Notice the time clock icon, which identifies that this technician has clocked in. So really the clock up here is attendance. Scott is a technician, and Scott is clocked into attendance. Notice the time clock icon down on the job. And I know these pop-ups are coming up, but sorry, they just happen to do that. Okay, so what the clock icon means on the job, it means the technician is clocked into that job. So if you look at Carol Roberts up here, notice there's no time clock icon. What that tells me is Joe is currently clocked in to this job down here. Scott is clocked into this job, and this guy here is not even clocked in. Want to bring your attention to the little gray box to the lower left of each of these. And again, I probably could use a different pointer here, but if you'll notice the gray box in the lower left corner, what that is telling us is, again, based upon the calculations, some of the calculations here, when the job was assigned, there's formulas in the background that estimates when we think that job is going to be done. Okay, so these are estimates providing when we think the job will be done. And again, let me point out that they are estimates. If we look across this, we're going to see what we call the technician summary now. Okay, if you'll just hover over these, you're going to see the codes. So D means work hours. In other words, this technician normally works 9 hours a day. You can see the normal schedule is 8 to 5 p.m. The A is the work hours remaining. So again, it's 12:30 in Central Time where I'm at. Okay, so he's got 4.6 hours of remaining work hours available for today. The W is assigned work. How much work is assigned to this technician? So the 2 jobs you see down below Joe here have 7.2 hours on them. And assigned work remaining is 5 hours. What that means is there may be some jobs on either of these 2 jobs here, or some labor lines, excuse me, or packages that have been marked completed. So we're going to take into account if he's already done an alignment which was 1 hour, or any job on there, then that comes off of there. So even though there's 7.2 hours assigned to him, he's completed 2.2 hours of the 7.2, which means he has 5 hours remaining. Keep in mind again, these are estimated times to the best of our calculation, and you'll see that on top of each technician. So if you can't remember the codes, just mouse over and it's going to display. You can hover over the work order, and then you're going to see details on this particular job. So we see, if we read across the pop-up, this is work order number 221. It's on a 2002 Audi. The inspection is in progress. The technician is Joe Wrench. We've got an oil change inspection. There's no labor on that. we've got an oil change, and if you notice to the far right of the oil change, it's marked as completed. So that tells me that oil change has been done. What's left on the job is a tire rotation and balance, and it's expected to be completed, all things being equal, at 1:16 p.m. today. And I'm going to get that detail. That's what's called the pop-out summary. So if you just hover over any job, we're going to give you that level of detail. So you can see here there's a little bit more information, but we're seeing each of the inspections, okay, and we're seeing the services. Okay. You're seeing if it has been completed. Remember above here, the oil change has been completed. So once it's marked completed, okay, it'll identify that. And then you'll see the strut assemblies, expected completion time, the alignment, and it's telling us that the job will not be completed within the technician's work schedule. So there's more labor on this ticket than the technician has time left today to finish it. Now, we all know, if we've got a guy working at 120% productivity, I can't put that calculation in to say Joe Wrench works at 120% and Scott works at 70%. And at the bottom of that pop-up window, you see that we're saying that all calculations say this job isn't going to be completed today. So keep that in mind wherever you go in the system. You're also going to see on the far right of each of the jobs any work order flags. Okay, so here I've got a couple of work order flags. If I hover over, the O means the vehicle is going to stay overnight. Now I did this yesterday. I haven't updated that today. Okay, and then the S down here means that this guy needs a shuttle. So when we're done, we're going to have the shuttle car go pick him up. If you look over here on the right, you're seeing some other flags. The W means the customer is waiting. The P means we're waiting on parts. Notice down below Scott and Doug over here, which you don't see on Joe. That is because Joe is booked off for the rest of the day. I can't give Joe any more work. But if you'll notice, no work assigned for Scott. Scott is going to be free from 1:16 through 5 p.m. today. So Scott's, I can give him 3.7 hours worth of work. And Doug over here, 2.2 hours. So these are all indicators to keep you right on top of, I don't have anything else I can give to Joe. He's loaded, but I see these two people have time available. This again is a drag and drop. So if I've got jobs that are on site, I've got Jane Doe that dropped her car off. Well, Doug over here is waiting on parts. I don't want him sitting around, so what I can do is take Jane Doe, and again, just left mouse click, okay, drag Jane over and drop her, and now she's assigned to Doug. So you can drag and drop. I know it didn't work real well on the overview screen. I apologize for that, okay, but it will work for you guys, and now we've got Jane's vehicle in over here. Okay, so again, I then update the no work scheduled. So just remember, we can drag these things around. If I wanted to bring this job in, I can bring it in. I have to work a little bit slower with that. Bring it in, drop it, and now you see everything changes in here. The other thing I can do is if I want to actually go look at these work orders, I have two options. I can go in here and simply double click, and it's going to open up the work order. So here's the work order detail, which is what you guys are probably used to seeing on an ongoing basis. Okay, take me right back to the screen. So any of these I can simply double click on. I've got a scheduled appointment here for Dave Matthews coming in at 2 o'clock today. So, when he comes in, I can just open up his appointment and turn it into a work order from right here. So most all of the features you're going to recognize on your work in progress screen, you're also going to be able to recognize on your work in progress. On your prioritization screen, excuse me. Okay, so a ton of information on these screens. So just remember, we've got the workflow stage icon, which tells us inspection in progress. When you see the check mark, that means the work was authorized. Okay, you're going to see a time clock icon, which means the technician is currently clocked in. You're going to see their workload. Okay, you're going to see when they have available times. And again, if I wanted to look at tomorrow, I can move forward, and here's what I've got scheduled so far for tomorrow if I want to move back to today. Now, a while ago we said we know this job isn't going to be completed, okay? I'm not going to do a lot of research on how much time is left over. Let's just say there'll be a couple of hours that we're not going to get done today. So if I highlight, so focus on the job, and remember it turns blue, and then I have the ability to go in and create a holdover. Okay, so the holdover is going to go to tomorrow's date, or I can set whatever date and whatever time I want. So I'm going to set tomorrow, and I'm going to give him a little bit of time, so I'm going to give it to 10 o'clock. Okay, on the 16th, I create that. Duration, how many hours do I need to allocate to tomorrow? Let's say that he's going to have 2 hours worth of time left on this, so I'm going to put in 2 hours. I could put in a note if I wanted to, okay, and I think I have to, okay, so, you know, whatever notes you want, and then the technician. And as a matter of fact, I could even take that holdover and assign it to a different technician. An example, the 2 hours that is left over maybe isn't something Joe is going to do. Maybe it's something that Scott is going to do, so I can maneuver that between the technicians, and then I just click on OK. All right, so now I've got a holdover, and that's opened up time here. And if I look at tomorrow, okay, you're going to see there's that job. So just keep that in mind. Your holdovers allow you to allocate time to a future date. So because, again, all of that comes out of what we call the labor bank, meaning how many hours are available. And every time you book a job or assign labor, it's withdrawing on that labor bank. Okay, so, you know, there's a lot of other things in here. Like I say, get in, work with it. One of the things I'd encourage you to do occasionally is go in and do a refresh on your screen. So if you're going to switch back and forth sometimes, most of the time they'll automatically refresh, but you might get in the habit of doing a manual refresh occasionally. So I hope you find some value in the technician's screen. Let's go back, and the last one we want to talk about is the Resources tab. The Resource tab allows the user to schedule blocks of time to a resource. A resource could be a dedicated bay, an example, an alignment bay, an oil change bay, or it could be a piece of equipment, a scanner, a tire machine, anything that you would maybe want to allocate. The time available for the resource is aligned with the shop hours for the specific day. And again, we're going to show you, where these hours get set up. So the last tab is the Resource tab. Okay, now this is how I've got mine set up. I've only got one alignment machine, so I'm going to set it up as a resource and allocate those times to that. I've got an oil change bay. I've got a scanner. I've got a tire mounting machine and a balance machine. Okay, let's go look over here. I've got Dave Matthews. He's got brake noise. I don't really need a resource for that right now, so I'm going to look at the next one. I got Carol Roberts. I got an oil change and a tire rotation. The oil change has been done, as you guys can see. If you look at the end of the oil change line, it's marked completed. So maybe I want to allocate the time for the tire rotation. So what I'm going to do is, again, focus by left click, hold down the mouse. I'm going to bring that job over here. When I drag it over, it just asks me to verify. This is the job, the customer, the repair. Okay, when the job is being assigned, you'll see I'm at 12:33, or you can change that. Maybe I'm not going to assign this until 1 o'clock. I have that capability, and how much time am I going to allocate to this job? When I click on OK, that resource now is blocked for that amount of time. Let's look at another one. Now it's going to stay over here too, okay? So keep in mind, it's going to be in both places. Let's go down to the next one, Fred Ben. Okay, so I've got brake system. I'm not really worried about anything there. Let's go down here. I've got an alignment. Okay, let's go, but it's been completed. Let's go down to this one, cooling system, and let's take a look at Mr. Brown. Okay, you guys see I've got a mount and balance 4 tires and an alignment. Okay, so I can move that over to the tire machine. and let's see if we can do that right away. Okay, so I'm going to grab this job, excuse me, it was this one right here. So let me hover over. Okay, I'm going to move that over to the Tire Mountain balance. Again, whatever time I want to assign this job. Okay, so maybe it's going to be 2 o'clock that I assign this job, the amount of time. Okay, and then I also have an alignment. Let's see if we can drag it over to the alignment also. Okay, so I want to block off the alignment. Okay, I want to block the alignment off at 3 o'clock or 3:30, whatever time, and how much time do I want to allocate. Okay, so now I know where my resources are. So the alignment base got 2.5 hours booked on it. The tire mounting machine, but you see down here, it's open from 4:30 to 5. So if I needed to get something into that resource, all this does is allow me to allocate time so I know how to book work and allocate the equipment and or the bays if I had limitations on those. So there you go, guys. You've got your overview screen, you've got your technician view screen, you've got your resource screen. I'm assuming you're going to spend the majority of your time on this screen. I think that's where most people are spending a large portion of their time. But really, wherever you guys need to do it, that's really what we're after in here. Okay, let's go back to the presentation for a second. Probably shouldn't have done this in hindsight, but I did it anyway. And what I did is I've just created a small grid, which identifies the action and then the different viewing screens, okay, and what you can do. So these are just a grid showing you where you can go and what you can do on those screens. These are the menu options. You can create new appointments, you can assign appointments, create holdovers, edit work orders or appointments, update the status, edit the service advisor, add or edit or technician, print, email, or export, or view the work in progress scheduler. So it's simply just a grid to kind of walk you around and show you where these things are and what you can do on the screens. The next screen in here is the prioritization setup. So let's spend a minute on this. Employees and technicians. You guys have all seen now that the prioritization focuses on employees, mostly referencing technicians and sometimes the service advisor, where you can apply a service advisor. So we're just going to walk out into setup, and in order to make that work properly in your setup, you're going to need to make sure you have your employees set up as technicians or service advisors. And if you don't, they're not going to show up on that screen. We talked a little bit about Joe Wrench. Okay, in my case, I use names, I don't use numbers, and Joe is a technician, and how I want his name displayed as a technician on all those screens. Okay, so all I've done is make that entry. I've got Scott here, who is a technician and sometimes backs me up as a service advisor. So I've got Scott in as a technician and the display name, along with a service advisor. So these names have to be entered in order for that information to show up and have these columns on these screens. Pretty simple to do, really, guys. The next thing we want to talk about is the time clock security. Listen, anybody that is entered into the software as a technician, okay, and you set up security, which is required to use the time clock. So security settings are under the manager's options, under security options. And what I'll do is just explain the roles. Now, please don't pay attention to some of this, I apologize, but any technician is automatically going to have the ability to use the time clock. And it's required because each individual technician will be clocking into their time and the jobs that they're working on. So as long as you put a technician security role on, okay, they're going to have the ability to use the time clock. And again, the time clock becomes fairly important when you're looking at the prioritization screen to track the time, the available hours, all those things are important here, okay? The next thing would be the scheduler, shop hours and employee hours. Okay, so let's go back to the software. We're going to go back to setup, and kind of all the way down here, almost all the way to the bottom, okay? Under scheduler, you're going to see shop hours. So all those calculations we were talking about, when's it going to be done and all these time frames, okay, take into consideration your shop hours. So enter your shop hours in here. The next thing you want to think about to track the employees, what I talk about, the labor bank, right underneath shop hours is employee hours. And on your technicians, you can go in and enter their work hours, okay? A question I'm sure is going to pop up, so I'll answer it even though nobody's asked it, or maybe it's on the list, is we cannot allocate lunch hours. It's really just the amount of hours. Okay, so 8 to 5, 9 hours a day. And I just have to consider if the guy takes a lunch break or whatever, I may need to cut back to 4 o'clock if you want to, keep that in mind. And this is what creates the labor bank. So anybody, any of the technicians that are going to be doing this, if you put this information in, their employee hours, okay, then you're going to be able to monitor this summary right here, hours available and all those things. Those are all part of that. Keep that in mind. Work order flags. Work order flags was added probably close to a year ago. Love the feature. It really helps me a lot, okay? And your work order flags are going to be right in here underneath your work order setup. Everybody that's bought or acquired the software, or probably within the last 8 months to a year, something like that, we import these flags, okay, which identify different statuses. I was showing you a while ago, one of the jobs had a shuttle, one of them was waiting on parts and things like that. You can add, edit, make any changes you want to these. They'll have a foreground and a background and a code. And again, that's what you're seeing here with this little yellow. So I know the vehicle's staying overnight. I know we're waiting, customers waiting, and we're waiting on parts. So those are little tidbits that'll really help you guys stay on top. Resources. Let's take a look at some of the resources. This is fairly new also. Under setup, okay, it's up a little ways in the tree of information. Right under employees, if you wanted to make a note, between employees and suppliers is resources. And this is where you can add those resources. Again, in my case, I've got one dedicated alignment bay. I've got one dedicated oil change bay. Forgive me, I've got one scanner, okay, and I've got one tire mounting and balancing machine. So I want to be able to allocate time to those through resources, and that's what you're going to see back here on the resource screen. Okay, so you can put as many resources as you want in, those things that you want to track and keep around. So hopefully these are some things that you guys can take forward and utilize.